In this edition of Fix the Flick, we'll be looking at 2010's Clash of the Titans. The remake of the classic 1981 film had some marked improvements over the original. Better special effects allowed the action to feel more real, and a centralized villain kept the story more focused. However, the story had problems too. From the very beginning, there was no one really worth rooting for, and that includes Perseus. We knew nothing about him other than he was trying to get revenge for the death of his family. But since the audience spent less than 6 minutes of screen time with them, we didn't really care. Watching Perseus search for his true father only to find out that it was Zeus would have been a great way to learn more about him as he learned more about himself. And seeing Perseus deal with his origins in order to forge his own destiny would have made him a determined underdog, not just generic action hero number 4. So with that in mind, let's try to fix Clash of the Titans. The narration in the original film explaining how the gods remained immortal wasn't just heavy-handed exposition. It was also unnecessary. Zeus and Hades clearly explain the situation later in the movie.
You created them for one reason, so their prayers would fuel our immortality.
So instead, we start the movie with King Acrisius trying to smite the gods for their mistreatment of humanity. We actually get to see a massive army laying siege to Mount Olympus, instead of just being told about it. In the released movie, Zeus loved Acrisius, so instead of destroying him, Zeus taught him a lesson. In this version, a pitiless Zeus destroys the army of Acrisius and adds insult to injury by raping his wife and disfiguring him.
I can't use Zeus!
Not only is this more interesting than narration, it also clearly defines that the gods are vengeful and sadistic, and humanity is just trying to be rid of them. Acrisius throwing Danae and Perseus into the ocean goes the same. But instead of Danae dying and Perseus being raised by a fisherman, in this version both Danae and Perseus survive and are taken in by King Cepheus. And that makes Andromeda Perseus' sister, which makes us more emotionally invested when her life is threatened by Hades. It also has Perseus trying to save a loved one, rather than trying to get revenge on someone who can't die. From there, we follow Perseus, who grows up extremely interested in who his real father is. Danae refuses to talk about it because it's too painful, so Perseus studies as much as he can to learn the truth. A few years later, King Cepheus is celebrating Andromeda's birthday, and having seen the gods' cruelty firsthand, he declares that the gods will no longer be worshipped in Argos.
A new era has begun. The era of man!
Meanwhile, Perseus is hunting the Pegasus for Andromeda's birthday gift. He manages to capture one, but doesn't have the heart to cage such a magnificent animal. As he lets it go, Draco shows up. In the original version, Draco isn't a big fan of Perseus.
Who are you? Why were you sent?
I don't know.
In this version, he's actually Perseus' best friend. This allows for more character moments, which will get us to care more about what's happening to them. Draco tells Perseus that Argos soldiers are trying to demolish the statue of Zeus, so they go and try to stop them. Perseus has no love for the gods, but he also doesn't want to intentionally provoke their wrath. Up on Mount Olympus, Zeus and the gods are talking about Argos rejecting them. This scene goes pretty much the same, with Hades manipulating Zeus's vanity and spitefulness. He convinces Zeus to allow him to punish the people of Argos as an example to all of humanity. At the foot of Zeus's statue, Perseus and Draco arrive just as the soldiers topple it into the sea. And just like in the released film, a flock of Furies rips into the soldiers. Then they resolve into Hades, who heads for the palace, and Perseus chases after him. Hades begins to intimidate the partygoers, and Perseus arrives just as Hades kills his mother. Now when we see Perseus lose his mother Danae, we actually care about it, because we've spent time getting to know her and Perseus. Hades threatens Andromeda, then looks at Perseus and says that it is the will of Zeus, your father. At this point, not only has Perseus' mother been murdered and his sister sentenced to death, his whole conception of who he is put into question. So, when the king and Andromeda are figuring out their next move, Perseus says that he read about the Stygian witch's ability to see the answer to any question. He says that he will go alone to ask how they can avoid Andromeda's death and the destruction of Argos. Draco immediately steps up and says that he will go with Perseus. So the two of them, along with some of the palace guard, set out to see the witches. Meanwhile, Hades meets with former King Acrisius, now called Calibus. This scene goes the same, with the exception of Hades leaving out that he killed Calibus's wife, Danae. We cut back to Perseus and his band just in time for them to come across the Stygian witches.
Visitors! Who is a visitor? Got the eye. Who is it?
This scene goes the same except for when we reach the end. Rather than the witches telling Perseus that he'll die, which A, is no big revelation because he's on a super dangerous quest, and B, it doesn't come true anyway. Instead, Perseus asks the witches if Zeus is really his father, and they confirm that yes, he is. When Hades hinted at his origins, Perseus was scared, but now that he has confirmation, he feels completely trapped by his past. He even wonders if the god's selfish nature will cause him to abandon Argus and his sister when they need him most. But Draco reminds Perseus that he chose to go on the quest. Draco tells him that you are what you do. You need only choose what that is. With that line, Perseus starts to make the transition from being obsessed about his past to forging his own destiny. And that destiny includes getting attacked by Calibus.
You reek of your father.
The fight with Calibus and eventually the Scorpions plays out the same. Except that none of their weapons can penetrate the Scorpion's armor. Then Perseus remembers from his books that the Scorpion's underbellies are vulnerable, and the group uses that to finish them off. What doesn't happen is that the group is saved by genies, mainly because they don't appear in Greek mythology and they added almost nothing to the movie. Just like in the released film, Perseus and his men hunt Medusa in her lair. And just like in the released film, all of them get killed one by one. But at the climactic end, Draco dies helping Perseus finally cut off Medusa's head. And we, the audience, are just as affected by his death as Perseus. Draco, the guy that stood up for and stood by Perseus the whole movie, is dead. This is Perseus's absolute lowest moment. He sits down and basically gives up. But just as he is about to give in, Perseus remembers Draco's words, that he needs only to choose who and what he wants to be. And that's a good thing because Calibus shows up again, trying to kill him. In the original movie, after Calibus is stabbed, he tells Perseus not to become a god, like Perseus was in some kind of danger of becoming like them. But since Perseus spends the entire movie saying that he hates the gods, there was no real chance of that happening, and the line feels completely unnecessary as a result. In this version, Calibus, getting the upper hand, taunts Perseus by asking the demigod why he doesn't pray for his father's help. And this is the first time the idea of interacting with Zeus has come up. And because this is Perseus's lowest point, we have a real feeling that he just might ask for help. But Perseus fights back, saying that he is a man, and that he will decide his own destiny. And with that, he kills Calibus. And from there, the beats play out the same. Perseus rides Pegasus back to Argus, which is getting destroyed by the Kraken. Hades has made his coup against Zeus and tries to stop Perseus. Perseus rescues his sister and turns the Kraken into stone. At the end of this version, Perseus and Zeus talk for the first time. And when they do, Zeus is proud of what Perseus has accomplished. He offers him a place among the gods. But now when Perseus refuses Zeus, it feels more like he's earned the right to turn him down. This version sees a wiser, more mature Perseus. He's no longer the kid in search of his past, but a man trying to build his future. So, that's how I would fix 2010's Clash of the Titans. Are there any movies that you think are in need of repair? If so, email me at the link down below or post a comment. And remember to click like and subscribe if you want to see more movies get fixed. Until next time, I'm Mr. Fix-It for Fix the Flick.